right of the people, baby.
To truly choose to love is heroic.
Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people.
It takes the willingness to stand by and do what has to be done when it has to be done.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Offtheshelfbookclub. And today we're starting with our first book, How to Be an Antiracist. We read chapters like the intro to chapter 2. And we're just going to be going over that today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How do you feel about the first few chapters?
Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of good things that I've like considered. That first intro, like when he was going over the speech, kind of had me I was caught off guard by that. I'm glad he's changed his ways from that. But that was wild. It was a little wild.
That is true. When I first read the book, I was a freshman in college because the college that I went to, they do like a first year book where everybody, like their freshman year, every single person that goes in, they get a book and they all read it in like a class that they have to take, which is like a first year seminar class. And so this was our book. So when I first had read it, like, I don't think I was so shocked about necessarily things that he was saying. I mean, like, I looked at him and I was like, as he was explaining, I'm like, yeah, I guess that is kind of crazy to say those things, not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
But like, the concept was still somewhat new to me, I guess you could say, or maybe just didn't think about it in that sense. And so rereading it now, knowing all the things that I know now and have learned all those, I'm like, looking back, I'm like, that shit's fucking insane.
Yeah, that was wild. And like, and honestly, like, to write that in a book is like, it takes guts. Like, we have to admit that like, to write that, to admit that you did those things, like, you could have skimmed over all of that. And having that in the intro. Right. Because, like, to an extent, it kind of, like, it could put like a light on you that you don't necessarily want. And putting that in the intro of the book, I've really found just kind of interesting, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and it was just wild as fuck, like.
For real. But I think that's why I like this book, and, like, we decided to do it first than our original book, because what it does is, like, it opens that space of, like, you may have thought about things similar to what he was saying in that speech. You might have felt similar ways, or like it kind of leaves that space of like, you didn't know then, so you might have said things and stuff like that of that sorts that may even sound like you're progressive, but it's not.
Right.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm. We just gotta accept that, and then like that, sit with that feeling and be like, all right, man, like what I was taught was wrong. What I thought was wrong.
Right.
And being able to like move on from that. And honestly, like growing up, being like doing my speeches and stuff and my poetry and stuff like that, there's been things that I've said that I'm like, maybe you should have, maybe shouldn't have said that. But also, it kind of just, it's still like showing it's still showing the human aspect of it.
Right.
And like how all of us hold it, you know? Because maybe I didn't say something as bad as that, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that I said something along those lines, you know, and adding on to and playing into those parts.
Right.
It takes guts. It takes guts to even like admit that.
Right. And then it allows us for the rest of the book to like be able to help us do the unlearning that needs to be done.
Right.
And I mean, I feel like given that this podcast and stuff like that is all about education, I was like, yeah, maybe it's just, you know,
this is a good start.
Place to start out with. You know, because I feel like sometimes you struggle, like figuring out, like, of course, like there are a bunch of classics in written work that leave the basis for books like these. So like you want to start out with those because then it helps you understand these more. And also, like, I just felt like you don't need to have to read like the Souls of Black Folk that I know that he references in this book in the beginning to like be able to understand what he's saying, because he also teaches you
breaks
the
down those
idea of that, right? And then you can we'll eventually, like we'll do eventually, is actually read that book and break that down, and plenty of others that I know he talks about stuff like that.
And I think it was like going from the intro to talking about definitions. I think that was like going from talking about how you were, you know, misguided to create that speech, and then talk about like the ways that you were misguided through definitions first. I just thought that was kind of, you know, interesting, because we all have to deal with, you know, I don't know, the way that the different interpretations for a lot of definitions, and how people interpret words differently. And I think that that's what causes a lot of the divide as well, is because we don't have the same definition for things. And I really like the way that, you know, he sets the tone for how he's talking about these things with his definition of them.
Yeah. And I think the like definitions being that chapter 1 is also really important. Lays the groundwork for the whole book. This is how you're looking at these words through this lens. Then it gains a perspective. Racist, racism. Probably, like, you can hear about 4 different definitions for that one word, and they all can be right, because they're all right in their own way. And sometimes that leaves like a struggle to understand things in certain contexts, right? So if we can look at his definition of racist: one who is supporting a racist policy through their actions or inactions, or expressing a racist idea. Being able to sit here and be like, okay, so this is what you mean by that. And then being able to look through the book through that lens can be really helpful. I appreciate books that do that, because this isn't the only book that does that. With this book, Prisons Make Us Safer by Victoria Law, has, like, in the beginning, talks about different definitions and what she means by instead of like, and she goes off of, instead of the criminal justice system, the criminal legal system. What does that mean? Why you change the wording, and the importance of that, right? Talks about there is no justice in the current system that we have, and like justice is subjective. What justice is to an offender, to a prosecutor, to a victim, to, you know, all of these things look so different in itself. And, right, the system that we have set up in America today is not justice.
Truly.
So it's a legal system.
And like, something, I feel like I saw a quote recently that was like, the law doesn't determine morality.
No.
And that's just, I think once people like just even digest that thought, like think about that. And because like there's so many laws that are sit here and protect things that we can all agree that are not okay.
Right.
Like we can sit here and say that we can agree that like speeding tickets, like speeding, that's dangerous. It can possibly kill people,
right.
You know? And that's just a fact. We have to agree with that. And when we sit here and we say that a fine is how we need to deal with that. And you got people who sit here and say like, oh, a few $1,000s, that's pocket change to me. What type of, they can do that over and over and over again, and there not be any like real repercussion.
Right, where the smallest speeding ticket can affect somebody else.
Right.
Most.
Like that could leave you, your pockets light. You know what I'm saying? And it's like two different realities for that situation, and it's like morally that don't feel right. Like I can agree that this should be handled, and we should do something about that. You know what I mean? Remind people that this can kill people, but that's not really a reminder for somebody that that's pocket change too.
Right.
Point blank. Period. And that morally don't stand. That's not right.
Yeah. Right.
Point blank. And we need to get past that thought of like, oh, morally this is the correct thing because that's what the law says.
Right.
I mean, there's so many laws. That was just a super basic one.
Understanding situations is important for there to actually be proper justice, which is why restorative justice practices work so well. Because if you can come together, figure out what works for everybody that's affected in this situation, then like you can actually move forward with proper true justice that doesn't leave both parties hanging out to dry, because that happens so much.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be one-sided.
Right.
And it's not everything is black and white.
Yeah. People are able to properly re-enter communities and be successful in that. But we're not necessarily talking about that yet right now. We'll get there.
Yeah.
In this book a little bit, and in like about 20 other books that we have.
Yeah, be ready to do the knowledge. We're going to be doing the knowledge, man. So, I guess we should probably start off with our first question.
First question is, how does living in a predominantly white area or areas as a black or indigenous person of color may or may not affect how BIPOC internalize racism? If you're not, which is how we'll answer it. Some of you may not be a person of color, so if you're not, you might answer it in like the space of how might you show up in your communities that could possibly negatively or positively affect people of color around you.
Yeah. And we'd love to hear your comments and what your thoughts are and answers to these questions. So drop them in the comments, send an email, or reach out to our social medias, and we'll give your opinions and your perspectives platform here. So yeah, here's our perspectives.
I originally brought this question up because you're reading in I was reading like page 4, which is just the start of the book, and he was kind of going over like basically the vibes of like where he was living and his how his dad viewed the world and things like that. And it made me think like and how he thought about that like as a kid and things like that. And like, you know, you think back about, you know, being a kid, you didn't want to be embarrassed by your parents. You didn't want to be casted out of, you know, your society and things like that, like as kids and as teenagers especially, right? Because of certain things. And so like that's kind of what it felt like he was getting at in a space. And so I found it like interesting how that like how that shows up for people of color in predominantly white neighborhoods, because I think that shows up differently than like if you are in a neighborhood surrounded by people that look like you. And I feel like for us being people of color in predominantly white neighborhood and schools and of those things, pretty much almost our whole lives, on top of living in Minnesota, which basically that's what it feels like. Like that's just what it is. Like even in the cities, it's like you're still surrounded by a bunch of white people.
Yeah. Even though there's a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few of us, and then you still look around, and yeah.
Right. So like, I don't know if you want to speak on that space a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's kind of like I almost take that as like concert experiences. You know what I mean? Like going to a Kendrick Lamar concert and feeling like I'm there. I know why I'm there, and I'm like feeling this love, but like all these other people are not necessarily. I know they're not getting it like I'm getting it. They're not feeling it like I'm feeling it, and there's just this it's just a different experience of I don't know, just emotions.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to experience emotion as a person of color in a public setting, as in a predominantly white area, because it's like those emotions can easily put you in a box.
I mean, I feel like we had like constant clashing, like throughout, like especially like middle school and high school, when it came to us as kids of color, and then a lot of the white kids who had such a conservative way of thinking. Like I feel like it happened all the time. It was always there. It was always happening. There's always some shit happening.
And I think that's why, like, a lot of, like, not a lot. I won't say a lot, because in reality there isn't a lot. But the people of color that do come out, conservative and, like, spew these, like, racist thoughts, they usually, I feel like, fall victim to that and didn't have the strength or a person to tell them, like, yo, like, give them that guidance and let them know that ain't right.
Right.
I
don't know if this feels like it to you, because you talk to a lot more people than I did as a kid growing up, but it also feels like from being a student in these schools to working in these schools, there's a lot more kids with those conservative, like kids of color with those conservative viewpoints. Outwardly. Like I feel like when we were kids, like we all had we all had our moments, and I feel like we'll definitely get into those specifically later in the book, as well, because I know that there's a specific chapter where he talks about like racism between us as black people.
That's a good conversation.
And it's like a really really interesting chapter. He talks about his own experiences, the things that he did and things like that. And I remember when I first read this book, like, there were certain situations that I was in as a kid, and I know you were definitely in, like, I remember, like, I think, like, and hearing it and seeing it around there, that stuff. So I want to hold that for when we get there. But it also feels like it's way more prominent now than it was.
So I think, like, it's to an extent. I think that growing up, like, during, like, I think it was, like, our 8th grade year. That's when old boy was elected for the first time.
Yeah.
Right? And that was the first moment. It was 8th grade, yeah. I felt like right before that, we had a little bit more, not even more respect, but I think it was like people weren't just willing to outright just do shit.
Dare I say, did Trump win our middle school election that year?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. Probably. I mean, like that city right there, the city that we went, like that Altman was in, it was a red city. But like,
well, everywhere outside the cities is
technically, and the Cottage Grove, I don't think is.
And like Duluth area and like Grand Marais are like the like only 2 blue parts of our state.
Well, yeah, but it was normalized. Like there's a point where we normalized putting like my experience is that white kids really weren't saying the N-word around us because like they knew what's up. There's a few times where we had to, but like it was, they knew what was up. But then like once like 8th grade came around and then Trump won, things kind of shifted and you started to see people start saying some real like more bold shit. But it wasn't as bad as it. I felt like it got worse and worse and worse over time.
There's also so many things that happened that year.
Yeah.
And us going to high school as well. Like.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Bringing that up is like, that's when things started to escalate. Like when Colin Kaepernick. That was also Colin Kaepernick times, and like. Nobody was real, like everybody, that's when everybody was starting to had to make choices. Like you had to outwardly make choices because we were trying to normalize us speaking up.
And we were fighting for gun laws because Parkland had happened.
Right. Parkland had happened. And Parkland was actually like a really good example of like students taking charge and making sure that like, this is what we want. This is what the youth in the future want because we're the ones affected by it the most, you know? And that made it to where people had to outwardly make choices of like, are you okay with kids getting shot at schools?
Yeah.
You know? Are you okay with that? Are you morally okay with that?
Right. And
there were decisions that like, even with the Colin Kaepernick stuff happening, when athletes began to kneel, or even students, like that was a choice that people were outwardly making, and how you reacted to that too,
right,
was a choice that you were outwardly making. And it's almost like, you know, before before growing up around so much of that conservatism, it was so normalized. To the point where like, oh wait, this ain't cool to you? Like me, my life being on the line, your life being on the line at this point too, and with other conversations like police brutality, we started talking and we started speaking up more, and outwardly doing things, being like, you can't ignore it, and how you reacted, we got to tally that.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that we had a tally, so I don't have as many tallies as I need.
Yeah.
Because we grew up so like, it was so normalized.
Right.
And that's just a reality for a lot of people, especially like people of color in predominantly white areas. It's like, it's so normalized, and then eventually like you start talking about like regular things like, hey, I don't really want to be killed by the police. That's not really a big ask.
Yeah.
And you got an issue with that? And when that stuff was happening with our, you know, school, in our school with like when Colin Kaepernick was happening, that was a real big turning point. I mean, our school, we had a situation where a white girl was saying that hard R on, going crazy, and then at that point, like there was a point where you start to realize like that person who was saying those type of hurtful things on on social media can get protected than at school
Right.
because they're saying those things. But we're not protected because that person's saying those things. It's not really dealt with. And it's I mean, the school system, some school systems have done better on doing those things, but like it's still like we're victim. We still become victims of that.
Right.
Because it's so normalized. Like that's not a lot to say. That's not a lot to ask for. It's just basic rights.
Right.
Yeah. And like personally, when I was like doing speech, there's this thing called like speech honor at our school, or I was doing competitive speeches, and like having a rep of school that was willing to let something like that slide was like, low-key, it didn't feel right.
At least you weren't, what do you call it? Prior Lake? Where that one, there was some situation that had happened.
I mean, there's some situation that happened.
It was
in
worse
every
than what
damn
happened
city.
with us, though. That's for
I'm sure.
I can't remember exactly what happened.
Yeah, because and it just is. It's interesting. I mean, that's not. There was many situations like that.
Yeah.
Where police had to escort somebody because they wanted to act stupid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just like having to try and speak about these things as a person at a school that is actively doing those things. It just kind of feels like, it kind of feels like I don't know. It just feels weird and icky to be repping that.
Right.
Yeah.
But
it also felt good to sit there and be like, all right, well, even though I'm representing this school or this establishment that wants to do this, I can still take advantage of the platform and I'm going to say what I want to say.
Right.
And that's what we got to take advantage of.
Yeah.
And make them uncomfortable. Because we've been uncomfortable.
For real. Start changing policies.
Yeah.
To allow for there to be space to look at actual situations and not just go by, oh, well, this is what it says. I think there was something that went into it that had me thinking, because, as we're talking about worth as kids, Kendi had specifically talked about how he thought he was too stupid or too dumb for college, and like kept using things like test scores and stuff like that to judge himself. And so like it also brought up the idea of like how youth weigh their worth, which is getting into like our second question, is like, how is it that particularly like people of color or kids of color weigh their worth in terms of like school and stuff like that, and how maybe that differs or is similar to like all kids, right? And is it something that spans across like youth and gender and race and things like that? Because I feel like I see a lot of kids being extremely hard on themselves about the good grades that they're getting. And I think what's a good grade and what's a bad grade, of course, is different for everybody. But like I had a kid today throw away their TRF for getting a 24 out of 25 because they were upset that it was a 24 out of 25.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's still a good grade. Like, it's still an 8. It's 1 point.
Yeah, and it's like not that serious, man. It's all good. Like, we can't measure ourselves. Like, your self-worth is more than that grade.
Right.
And just like the grading system overall is like system that plays into like I don't know what's the word, quantifying
Yeah.
intelligence, and you really can't.
No.
And trying to put that on self-worth.
Right. If we've tried to quantify intelligence, and I think a lot of people think it holds weight, and I disagree with that, because there's a reason why there's so many different ways to weigh intelligence, is because there's not one. Right? Like you can you can have a IQ score, but then there's also other tests that show where you are most intelligent at in all different kinds of areas, and there's all this type of stuff. It just doesn't make sense to necessarily use tests at all to weigh your intelligence, let alone our standardized testing that we use that's skewed from the beginning because of racist systems. And I think that there is definitely a difference between people of color, especially like Black youth, because we're always told that we have to work 10 times harder to get to the same place as our white peers. And I think that remains true. We see it constantly throughout different spaces and different things, whether you're an A-list celebrity to being a junior in high school, and all the above.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that like a lot of what also like plays a part in that is like financially too. You see these, like, when it comes to like holidays, the holiday season, that's something to like be really considerate of. It's because like not everybody got it, like how everybody else may have it around you.
Right.
And like growing up in a predominantly white area, it feels like it's on, like you're the only one not experiencing those things, and you feel like that can affect your self-worth just because you just don't have it like everybody else does financially because of the system around you. And on average, we do. We struggle compared to them, even more in predominantly white areas.
Right.
So I think that plays a huge role into like how we view ourselves, and like I think it adds on to like personally, that's how I felt too. Like that I guess I shouldn't put that on everybody, but that's how I personally felt. And like feeling like something isn't right, but not being able to put your finger on it, you know. And that's just it's an interesting thing. And I think that he brings up something here on page 6 in the intro, which I think also plays a part in like the self-worth on both sides. He says racist ideas make white people think more of themselves, which further attracts them to racist ideas. And I think that that's true.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we base like our self-worth on like these systems and structure that existed way before us, and that plays a part in why we say things that may be actually be bad towards us too.
Yeah, there's a psychological like study that was done. I don't know the details. I can't remember the details. But like it basically was that, right? It was like a basic test, really easy test, simple test that white and black people did, and what you seen was like black people doing less than, and partly that was because like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You're being taught that all of these things, like you're less than, etc., and all that stuff. you then start to believe it, and then you start to produce those numbers that go into that. And so I think there's those spaces, right, where you start to like believe those, and then there's also spaces where like you work yourself to death because you don't want to be in that same space. And like, I know, at least for me as a kid, I worked myself to death trying to do shit that I didn't have the mental capacity to do in terms of academics. I didn't have the capacity to do the IB diploma.
Yeah.
And I should have known that. And I did know that.
Yeah.
And I still went and tried to do it. And until I couldn't anymore. And taking all those like AP and higher classes, of course, yes. Like I had the smarts to be able to do it. But in terms of all the things I had going on in my life and like the reality of those situations,
you're dealing with more than the average. Than the average at our predominantly white school.
You're not like, that didn't make any sense to put all that weight on me, right? You know, I think for a really long time, like I didn't look at the things that I had going on as like real issues, and I think that was part of the problem. And so like putting everything aside, not dealing with it, then attributed to poor habits in school that didn't show full potential.
Yeah. And it's harder for someone who's dealing with more. When you're dealing with more, you can't expect as much. And we have to give ourselves grace. We have to truly give ourselves grace because at the end of the day, we still, majority of the times, within that pressure that we put ourselves in, we create, we do well. It just isn't well on us.
Right.
You know, and that's like that's why we need we need to create environments, especially in education, like of grace and showing people that like, yo, it's alright. It ain't gonna be the end of the world. Like this grade, like you don't need to trip over a 24 over 25 out of 25.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's not your self-worth. 1, 2, that you're not gonna be thinking about that in 10 years.
Because you're still an incredibly smart student.
Right.
And you're not thinking about that 1 TRF.
Right.
Or even those 5 TRFs.
Right.
That are 24 out of 25.
You might be, but one thing you will be thinking about in 10 years is like the things that were going on in your life.
Right.
You know, the real things that matter. We need to continue to give ourselves space for that, to heal, to work through that, to all the things.
Right.
We need to just give the space. And I think that once we start loving ourselves, we can give ourselves the space and the grace to do that. We just got to realize our self-worth.
Which is really hard for teenagers. Yeah.
You know, and I think naturally there's going to be, you know, it's just going to be harder, but, you know, we just got to start doing it brick by brick because it creates a village. Or no, it takes a village. That creates it. Does create a village, but it takes a village too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's our third question? On to our third question. Is it how does nuance?
Yes.
All right. Question 3. How does nuance show up in racist and anti-racist spaces, and how should it show up in those spaces if you think it should exist there? Ooh. That's a...
Right, I'm trying to remember how I even came up with that question and where in the book. I don't think I wrote it down. But
yeah.
I think it had to do a lot with like his experience, the what is it, the speech that he did on MLK Day, and all of those things, and kind of like combining it, right? Because clearly what he was spewing was racist ideas. So then how can we create a nuance, like, if there should be a nuanced space in there, right? Because I think that even us, right, we can spew racist ideas. We also have to learn from them, and unlearn the things that we've been taught throughout, like, our whole lives. And even if you're not a person of color, right, you're still being indoctrined with those racist ideas. And even then, and more so, right, a lot of white people live in this space of comfortability that comes from racism. So you gotta like unlearn a lot of that. So where can we fit nuance in this conversation to be able to help educate and learn? And so, like, I guess going into my opinion, right, I think that there can be a little like spaces of nuance in there. Like, okay, right, like these ideas can be identified as racist. How do we unlearn this? Where are the resources and where we can unlearn this and then move forward?
Yeah.
And being able to identify the things that we've lived with, like what we just talked about, and things like that that are internalizing these racist ideas, and being able to like move with them, and it allowing nuance allows a space for people to learn, to be able to see other perspectives. How did somebody even get to think this way, like about us, for example, or whatever, right? And then how can we move forward with that and being like, this isn't actually true, here's why, let's work towards like a better space.
Yeah. And I think that we just, at the end of the day, if we want to, you know, eventually truly live in a world where we don't have to worry about these like racist ideas truly ruling over the way that we govern our life and the way that we maneuver through our life, we could get there. But it takes education.
Yeah.
It takes educating yourself and like doing the knowledge of reading, doing the knowledge of having conversation, and like it should be an education, and it doesn't stop in K through 12. Even if you choose to not go to college, like, we got to continue to create these spaces for people to learn. I mean, we're not gonna give people the space to be blatantly ignorant after we give them the information and we give them our chances.
Right.
But we do need to also understand that some people have never been told, like, have never been told that one perspective, and that one perspective could truly change their lives. Yeah.
That's why calling in people is so important, rather than calling out, because then it'll just like, that's what gives that space of like, I'm calling you in because of what you said, right? It is problematic because of this. Let's have a conversation on this now, right? Let's, move forward, right, afterwards, and allows that space to like move forward and like be better together, where like you call out, like people are going to defend themselves when they feel like being attacked, right? And sometimes it's hard to get past those things where you feel like you're being attacked. Then we're at like a lock, right? And so I think that there are some spaces, though, of course, where people are purposefully being dense.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say dense. Because I think there's a space where like ignorant in itself just means not knowing. Someone can be ignorant to the fact that it doesn't mean that you're a bad person.
Exactly.
Right. Or you think badly. But like purposely being dense, like the person that I was trying to correct on that Facebook post, like you're just purposely being dense at that point.
Mm-hmm.
After I told you the facts,
Mm-hmm.
and then you purposely ignore the facts and tell me that my facts are wrong.
Yeah.
Then like we're just like it's not.
We're not ever gonna agree. We're not ever gonna be on the same page, and that's, you know what?
I didn't even come at you. You mean? I just said this is actually not true. This is what's true.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that, like, I know it's not the same. He said, I feel like I'm trying to find the quote. Maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to find the quote. I think it's somewhere on page 16. But it's like, we got to start, like, we're not trying to save these people from their racist ways either. We're trying to liberate them from their racist ways, because it's truly it's chains. Because there's so much more beauty to life if we allow ourselves to let go of these things. And I also think that that's how we have to look at everything from now on, is like, we're not saying, like, we can only do so much, obviously. Like the dude with the Facebook post. Yeah. Dude's probably just not ever going to change.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But
right.
There's going to be people that we do come across that are going to be willing to look at a different perspective and liberate themselves from that thought and move towards a better life for all of us. Because the life that we and the perspectives that we bring to this world would be better for everybody. It's not just us. And that actually brings me to something else too here. I think it was in I think this is chapter 1. Definitions, yeah. On 15. Like, when he was talking about the guy who soul liberation when they're at the church. I just hope more people look at, like, the way that the pastor was talking to them. Like, we need to start looking at it like that. Just talking about Jesus, he was a liberator. If you believe in Jesus and you believe in the Bible, he was a liberator. And we can agree on that. Now let's move forward. We all believe in liberation to an extent. And that's another way of togetherness, and that's how we can break these chains. And I know that that's not necessarily about race, but the church, specifically the black church, has played such a huge role, obviously, in, like, the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. And right now, and in slavery. Yeah. And we need to bring that togetherness together again. Mm-hmm. Because that's how we defeat these things, because we all go through it, whether you're Christian, non-Christian, Muslim, and we all believe in liberation.
Yeah.
And that's how we bring this togetherness, and I think that also will help us in the long run, because that's all we need.
Yeah. I found that, like, space interesting as he talks about the church. Mm-hmm. And then, like, on page 17, he talks about, like, what's your definition of a Christian to his dad. He talks about a Christian as one who is striving for liberation. I found that so interesting. And I don't think a lot of people would say that today, especially with a lot of things that go on or that we've been dealing with, the things that have been happening in the church. I mean, we're talking about a Christian as liberation and a pastor is working with ICE.
Mm-hmm. That's a reality.
You're not liberating your people working with a federal agency like that. You're trying to you're trying to oppress our people, you're trying to kill our people as Minnesotans, as people of color, whatever it is, right? As immigrants, things like that nature, right? So I find it interesting because I think that is a great way to put it. I didn't grow up in the church at all. I never grew up around a church at all outside of being baptized. I was baptized Lutheran, and that was only because my mom did it, because my great grandma would have appreciated it, and that was her favorite person.
Depression.
And so like that was about it. That was probably like my first and only time really being up in a church like that. And so religion has never been at a forefront for me understanding those things. I kind of threw that away at a really young age. I went to a church preschool because I just love school so much, and I needed to go to preschool two years in a row. And I remember as a little kid, because everybody talk about praying to God and whatnot, and I did, and I was like, this feels really dumb. And I threw it away I don't even remember how young I was, but I was really young when that happened. I never really looked back. So when I moved into spirituality, it wasn't hard for me. I just was like, okay, cool. Maybe I tackle on something of that nature. What is something that I think matches my values? Because also, right, the church looked really different. It didn't look like the black church that was helping people during the civil rights movement, during slavery, when all of a sudden I started picking up this idea of religion and spirituality. It looked like something that was there to oppress people. And I wasn't with that. I wasn't trying to do that, even if I wasn't consciously thinking of those things. It just didn't seem right to me. And so I find it just interesting how the Christian identity and definition has changed over time.
I mean, I agree with you, because the definition of a Christian has definitely changed over time. And I think that, I want to say it was James Baldwin, or they were quoting somebody, but they were talking about how, specifically the black church turned Jesus into another thing, to something else. But I think that
it was James Baldwin.
Yeah. They turned it into their own thing, and they went in their own direction with it. And I think that plays a key role into also why I think that's why he defined being a Christian like that, is because that's what we held on to for a really long time here, specifically in America, is Christianity. The black church was real, the cornerstone of the black community for a really long time. And that's what led us to it. But I think that even all Christians can take on the viewing of Jesus being a liberator. I mean, he was an immigrant. That's a key thing. I mean,
an
going
anti-capitalist.
Anti-capitalist. He said he saw what was going on.
A carpenter.
Right. Fuck this table. Fuck the binges, dog. Well, not fuck the pigeons, but you know what I mean. Just seeing he was a liberator, and the fact that he was a liberator, I think that if we put that into perspective, you ICE agents that are Christians need to reevaluate yourself. Truly. But also everybody. We need to reevaluate ourselves. And I'm not saying reevaluate you being a Christian or not, but I'm saying reevaluate how you looking, how are we reading the word? I mean, he fed people. He didn't stop people from getting food. He created that. And I can agree with that. may not be a Christian, but I can agree with that. And if he was really like that, Jesus, yo, what up? We homies for real.
Mhm.
Cause that's what we gotta do.
Right.
And that's what it is like. And if we bring that energy, everybody, if we Christian, Muslim, everybody, if we all bring that energy of we just doing this for liberation, because that's what our deity wants. That's what our people want. That's what we want. That would be better for us.
Yeah.
I feel like I ain't answered that question that much, but we answered other questions. That was in the,
all right.
It was in the atmosphere.
We moved right into the next question anyways. Why is it important to talk about definitions?
All right, yeah.
And like, I think that it brings up like a great example, right? Because how we talk about definitions, then just it forms our way of thinking about things and how they change.
Mhm.
Like, and going in, sorry, I'm looking at there's a couple questions about definitions. I feel like just kind of like run smoothly into each other, but he also says, he says in here, right, if we don't do the basic work of defining the kind of people we want to be in language that is stable and consistent, we can't work towards stable, consistent goals.
Agreed.
Which is kind of like what
Agreed.
you were saying, right?
Yeah.
On liberation, we gotta be able to say Christians are who are striving for liberation. If you're a Christian, if you're a spiritualist, whether you're indigenous, you practice indigenous spirituality. If you're black, you practice hoodoo, and all the other like voodoo, like all those, right? All those different like African spiritualities that there are, right? Identifying you as a liberator, a Muslim, like, right? We can go on. We can keep going on. Jewish, whatnot, right? Like, if you can identify that you as this person, and this can go beyond religion too. It's just religion is what's being brought up at the moment. In the book, as a liberator, then it helps push, okay, then what is a liberator? What are these goals that we have for liberation, and then being able to actually work forth with that.
Exactly. And if we have the same definitions, it definitely makes it easier to know what we're going for, to know what is the, goal actually.
Yeah.
And I mean, and what's a goal ain't really worth nothing if it ain't really accurate and truthful and honest.
Right.
About the position you like to create a goal. You got to be honest about the position you're in.
Yeah.
And I think that definitions is where we start, because we need to know what position you're in.
Yeah.
And where do you lean? Like, if I tell you this is what this word means, where do you stand on that?
Right.
What I think that we should definitely go over some of the important definitions that he gave.
Yeah, I know on page 18 he gives quite a few definitions that I just think are important, like being able to understand how he puts out these definitions, and then in terms of reading like the book. So racism itself is, he says, racism is a mirage of race, or it's not a mirage, a marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
A marriage of racial policies and racist ideas that produce and normalize racial inequality. And then he says racial inequality is when two or more racial groups are not standing on approximately equal footing. Racial equity is when two or more racial groups are standing on a relatively equal footing. And then a racist policy is any measure that produces or sustains racial inequality between racial groups. And an anti-racist policy is any measure that produces or sustains racial equity between racial groups.
Yeah, and I think that those, like I said in the beginning of the pod, I think that those really set up the way that we, the look at the world, look at his perspective moving forward. And I really like how he works with those definitions as he's explaining his thoughts. Like that was a really beautiful.
Yeah.
He beautifully ties it in like that.
I think it shows why it's like being able to have a clear and concise idea of what different definitions are then helps have those proper conversations. So us being able to be like, all right, these are what these mean in this context helps have those conversations. Let's move back to, it helps us ground ourselves when having conversations, right? Sometimes, right, we might get lost in what maybe we originally think something means, or the multitude of definitions that something has, because I could tell you that racism has a different definition when you look it up on Google, right? And so being able to be like, all right, let's go back, right? We know that racism means this in this context. Let's use that then to reform the conversation that we were just having.
Truly. And like, I this thought just kind of came up to my head of how I think that definitions are so important down to the point of like, we get to the Constitution. Or not a Constitution. This is a bill or Constitution. One of the American bill shits. Fuck it. But it says all men are born equal, right? All right. What's your definition of men? And all men and what's equal, right. And you know what I mean? Yeah, and I think it's like important to have that definition. So like when we have somebody who's in office right now who decides that, I mean, he's really just saying fuck the whole book, but like who sits here and says like, nah, this ain't how it is. The way that they've changed history, and if we set these definitions in stone, it makes it to where like we can ensure that this history doesn't repeat itself. And I love that saying, but I hate it because like, yeah, it's true. History repeats itself all the damn time, but like,
it's not repeating itself in good ways currently at the
moment. Well, not even just that. Does it really need to?
Yeah.
Does it really need to?
Yeah, I think also the important thing is that when we talk about how history repeats itself, it's usually in terms of things that we haven't learned from yet. Happens a lot. You can attach that into different spiritual beliefs too. Some people, if you haven't learned the lesson that you were supposed to learn, all right, now you back here, you better learn that lesson. Like right. You're gonna keep having the same or similar situations until you learn learn the lesson that you were supposed to learn.
Truly. Right.
And so, like, that's something that people believe in a spiritual sense and in terms of, like, reincarnation that can be true in actual history itself, or that's how history plays out, right? And so I feel like there was something I was going to say, and then I forgot it.
It's all good. It also brings me to, I want to talk about a definition of like neutrality, like you being neutral. And like specifically he says it on page, I believe it's 8. I suck at finding the quotes right away, but neutrality is a mask for racism, and I think that that's something we have to like truly get that through our thick damn skulls as a society, is because that is not cool. Like,
right.
Like you being neutral when there's just blatant wrong going
Yeah.
is not okay.
Right.
There's no opinion about that. There's no other opinion. There's right and there's wrong.
Yeah.
And we have to get that, like, we have to set that. And it's kind of brings me back to what we were talking about earlier of, like, normalizing being like that, being around so many conservative people, normalizing that and telling people, like, making people realize that, no, there is no neutral zone in this.
Yeah.
You're either okay with being complicit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're okay with being complicit, okay, let's just let us know. That's okay. Just let us know.
Yeah.
We can have a conversation and try and make you understand why you shouldn't be. But that is, I think, an important, like, definition I think that we all need to start understanding is that, like, being quote unquote neutral is not. It's racism.
Right.
It's a mask for racism. You just don't want to have to outwardly make a choice.
Which, like, is that space of, like, living in comfortability. Because once you make that choice, you are no longer comfortable. And people, especially white people, when they've profited off of it unknowingly, right? There's a lot of white people who don't realize the amount that they truly do profit off of white supremacy and racism. And so, like, when you take those sides, you lose that comfortability. Because even to an extent, you'll be removed from that comfortability. We can even look at it in the instance that's happening right now, right? Minnesota took a stance that said, fuck you. Everybody done lost their comfortability.
Right, shit.
There ain't no comfortability here.
Right.
Which some of us have already lived in. I've been living in for a really long time, even here in itself, because a lot of things that should be talked about aren't talked about in Minnesota. That is a whole issue in itself.
We got a history, man. We got a history of it.
But, like, the vast majority of people that were living in that comfortability no longer do.
And now, if we would have said something earlier, maybe we could have stopped this. But hey, yes, now is better than never. Now is better than never. We gotta start moving forward. And it really is like you said, is like a now that it's at your front door, we're seeing it a lot more now. People that I've never seen talk about politics are speaking up. Right. They got to speak up because guess what? Now it's knocking at your door. And like we've been telling you, like, yeah, literally, like we've been telling you, like people of color have been telling you, specifically Black and Indigenous people have been telling you, yo, this shit's crazy, right? Like, it's always been against us. And when you let somebody think that they have so much power, it's only a matter of time until they think that, oh, wait, hold up. This is how I got this much power. I could probably I could fuck with you right now. Yeah. Like, you could be my next victim. Who's the next victim?
Right. Especially here, because there's so much that just goes untalked about. We live under the umbrella of being one of the happiest places to live. And we have some of the worst disparities in this country. Like the riots during George Floyd didn't come out of nowhere. Like, it didn't just go right. Like, no, like, we've had
and even
so
this
many
shit.
things that lead up. Like, we had so many things that lead up to it. It was coming. It was predictable because of the things that happened here that nobody wanted to talk about because
Minnesota nice.
Minnesota don't want to see color for real.
Yeah, and that being colorblind is that neutral shit. It's that neutral shit. Put your mask on. Yeah. You're racist. Right. Just don't put your mask on. Put your hood on. Yeah. Put your hood on. That's the reality. You're racist. There ain't no neutral zone here. Period.
All right, so like moving into chapter 2 and the final chapter of this section, dueling consciousness, which I mean, this is like the chapter that I feel like really connects with the souls of black folk by W.B. Du Bois, and talks about that concept that he initiates at first. And I think we'll come back to this chapter specifically probably later when we actually read this book. And so I feel like the ideas of dueling consciousness is interesting. I think we all deal with those things, right? And so specifically in the book, in page 26 and 27, he talks about how a civil rights lawyer went to the New York Times in 1985. And so she talks about how the ways to overthrow the complicated predatory ghetto subculture. And then also, it says here in the book, she called on the people like my parents with ghetto origins to save ghetto males and women by impressing on them the values of hard work, education, respect for family, and achieving a better life for one's children, even though she had no empirical or substantial evidence to prove her positioning. So, like, the question that comes from this that, like, I created was, like, what does it mean and what is the importance of, quote-unquote, like, ghettotizing people and our people, and what are its lasting effects? And so that also stemmed from the book The Color of Law, which we'll also read definitely sooner rather than later, I think. And he talks about, like, the origin, like, my understanding is, like, the origin of ghettos, it coming from the 40s and during the, like, Holocaust time, right? They moved Jews into ghettos and things like that, right? And so I feel like what happened was that America took on, I mean, they always had it, but, like, took on that same space, but then also then attached the word to people themselves and attached characteristics to it. Then, like, this idea of ghetto transformed into something beyond what happens to people.
Right.
And so, like, he makes a point in that book specifically is being ghetto isn't a person. It's something that's happening to you.
Right.
Something that happened to you. And
like poverty is something that happens to you.
Right. And so, like, being able to change those perspective, like that perspective about ghettos, interest, like, I think is important because it also, like, in addition to not villainizing the word ghetto, is super important. And so, like, I think, like, what this gets down to is then it's lasting effects, right? He talks about later, a little bit later on page 27 in the second paragraph, my parents, even from within their racial consciousness, were susceptible to the racist idea that it was laziness that kept black people down, so they paid more attention to chastising black people than to Reagan's policies, which were chopping the ladder they climbed up and then punishing people for falling. And I think, like, it, like, tackles, like, black elitism. Right? We see that a lot with that. I mean, elitism in general, of course, because that's what elitism does. But in terms as we're talking about our people and black people, right? That black elitism does that, right? It pushes down those people and punishes them for falling.
Being like, why'd you fall?
Right. You're not doing the work. You're not working hard enough. When we know it's all of these systems that were built over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years that make it so that it's hard, and now we're playing into this facade of things. And ghettotizing is a made up word. I don't know if it was actually used in The Color of Law, because I can't remember off the top of my head. But I made up the word as I made up the word as I was reading it, keeping that in mind. Like, I feel like I heard it somewhere.
I mean, but it makes sense because like that, just that, exactly that quote that you brought up of how his parents looked down on black people, like they were susceptible to the racist idea that it was laziness that kept black people down, and I see that still to this day. Like a lot of people still think that, and I've had conversations with some of my African American friends, African immigrant American friends, I'll say, and I had conversations with them about like why African Americans are in the position that we are in, and trying to explain to them like, no, it's not laziness. There is a system. And that brings me like having to like try and, you know, not all of them. I'm not saying all of them are, but a lot of my experience has been with them. And when I, you know, have to have that conversation, it's like you have to bring up, just show how it actually affects everybody.
Right.
You know, and that brings me to like talking about the crazy stats that he brings up in 25 that like adds on to the ghettotizing of black Americans specifically, but BIPOC period. So it starts here. Yet African American on page 25. My apologies. Yet African Americans are far more likely than whites to be jailed for drug offenses. Nonviolent black drug offenders remain in prison for about the same length of time, 58.7 months, as violent white criminals spend 61.7 months. And that's nonviolent versus violent. And that shows like there is truly a system here working against us. Because ain't no way a nonviolent offender is spending anywhere near as much time in prison. I mean, we don't agree with prisons, period. But you telling me that a violent offender damn near gets the same amount of time as a nonviolent offender? That just doesn't make sense.
Right.
And that just, it's the system blatantly working against us.
And that's just one system.
That's just one
system that's interconnected with all the other systems, but
right.
It's still one system that's like punching down at us as people, right? Like America in itself holds 25% of the world's prisoners. You got to think about that. We like top 5 in terms of population, I think.
But we're not even in the billions compared to like China and India, right?
And we hold more prisoners than they do combined, which doesn't even
that doesn't make sense. Does it at all?
That doesn't make sense. Not to mention like how much like incarceration just affects people in general down the line. Is it like 1 in 4 or 5 kids have a parent that was incarcerated at one point in time? The number is about like, it's a lot. It's in the millions. I can't remember off the top of my head. And like that has lasting effects on kids that also drive them to incarceration, right? Like it's a working model, making it hard for those to succeed without even doing the things that would, quote unquote, like, get them incarcerated. Like, that's not in, like, these things are not choices that they're necessarily being made, that they're making themselves. It's something that's forcing that space on them. Not to mention when the war on drugs happened, and it was like 1 to 100 in terms of like jail time for crack versus cocaine.
Right.
And who's getting arrested for crack and who's getting arrested for cocaine?
Very different.
Right.
Very different, right.
Which is crazy as it is. Like, that is a crazy, and it's still bad to this day. It's still like not a good ratio to this day. It's better than what it was. And like that, it makes no sense, right? They do the same amount of damage to people, right? Which, do I think that people should go to jail for drug offenses? No, not necessarily. No, not at all. Because I'm a prison abolitionist, so no, I don't think so at all. But like so like for there to even be that kind of proportion in itself is insane.
It is insane, and there's no other. You can't excuse it for anything, and I think that also explains, like, they want it to, like, that was the goal of the Reagan era in the Reagan administration, because like on page 26 here on second paragraph, it talks about how black leaders joined the Republicans from Nixon to Reagan, and with the Democrats from Johnson to Bill Clinton, and calling for largely receiving more police officers, tougher and mandatory sentencing, and more jails, right? So they were one of the quote-unquote, I'll say quote-unquote good ones, really just being coons saying that we need more policing, but also, in the same breath, they also called for the end of police brutality, more jobs, better schools, and drug treatment programs. And those good ones that they had working with them still said those things. But they still had the agenda of ghettotizing us to the point where, like, nah, forget that. Because they said these calls were less enthusiastically received.
Right.
Because they were truly just trying to villainize us. That's
Right.
all it was. It wasn't trying to save trying to actually deal with the problem, the quote unquote problem. But
Right, because you want to call for these things, and yet during the Bill Clinton era, I mean, the amount of, like, the increase in incarcerated people grew like 200%. Like, this, the numbers are insane. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head at this moment, but the, like, numbers are truly insane. I thought the book said something about that, and it might not, but I have the number somewhere that I can even pull up, like, that'll definitely be pulled up in a different space, right? But an important thing to do to reverse these things, the effects of ghettotizing people, is to look at people. Like, on page 28, he says policies are people are in our faces. Policies are distant. We're particularly poor at seeing the policies lurking behind the struggles of people. So my parents turned away from the problems of policy to look at the problems of people, and reverted to striving to save and civilize black people rather than liberate them. But we've always been a civil group of people. right.
We never needed saving. We just have a system actively working against us, and you are going to see that effect. you're always going to see that effect. If there's anything working against anything, you're going to see an effect. Nothing's just going to run smoothly.
Right.
And if we start to look at, people who fall victim to believing in these damn policies, you just got to start talking to people. Start conversating. We're human beings. We're social beings. We need to start having those conversations so you can start looking at people as humans. Because if you continue to vote and push these policies that are dehumanizing people, then we're bound to continue to see these issues. And we wonder why history repeats itself. Just because somebody words it a little bit prettier doesn't mean anything. Still racist policy. Period.
Right. And like I think that shows up in all different kinds of ways, and connecting it to right now, like the way we're villainizing immigrants, or people are villainizing immigrants for no reason. Mind you, right? Like, people talk all the time about how this country was made up of immigrants, or built up on immigrants, whether you believe that or not.
Right.
Right? Like, this land is native land at the end of the day, point blank, period. This country was built on slave labor and maintained by immigrants. And I think that's that space. That's what I believe, right? It was maintained by immigrants.
And if you love your country so much, then why'd you let us build it?
Oh God.
And if you think we're such
that shit yourself,
right? And if you think that we're like less than, if we're such like less than, then why'd you let us build such a beautiful country that you're so fucking proud of? Like, make that make sense. Make it make sense. It don't. Right.
These policies have villainized immigrants since the beginning, right? When the first border policy was ever made that was against Asian people and excluding Asian people, to then excluding African people and Hispanic people, and then, right, like, so on and so forth, right? Even like their own Europeans, making it even harder for them to get in here. Because, like, on a good day, if you hit all the right things, right, if you're lucky enough, it's still gonna take like 5 to 10 years to get that citizenship. And that's if you're lucky all the way through.
It's a hell of a process, no matter who you are. Point blank, period.
And instead of villainizing the policies that are making it hard for people to actually get legalized citizenship, you're villainizing the people that are just trying to be here to get a better life, to have a better life.
And we just gotta accept that. Just accept it. Not we, because I've accepted it.
Right.
But as a people, as a fucking world, we just gotta accept that.
Yeah.
Something that I think is important, though, to move forward with, like, dealing with the ghettotizing of our people is, in order to combat that, is we have to also lead by example, specifically for our youth. Like, that's the most important part. Like, when you hear somebody saying something anti-black or anti-anybody, we nip it in the bud.
Right.
And we teach them how to move forward from that. And we make them apologize. Because nobody is too high or not. Nobody's above apologizing. Point blank, period. Right. And learning from their mistakes. And that's why we need to lead by example. And something that I really connected with was on page 30. I think that this really helps with combating ghettotizing. It says on the second paragraph here, My favorite church program happened every Thanksgiving. We would arrive as lines of people were hugging the church building, which smelled particularly good that day. They were serving Thanksgiving. And a little bit later on, towards the end of the paragraph, he says, I tried to be as kind to these hungry people as my mother's peach cobbler. That's just that right there. I feel like his mother's peach cobbler. Just comparing it to that.
Mm-hmm.
Spreading love like that.
Right.
And he can do that with his words. Just that that by itself. But to finish this quote off, it's this program of black people feeding black people embodied the gospel of black self-reliance that the adults of my life were feeding me. Mm-hmm. And like that is what it takes in order for us to overcome and to defeat these stereotypes, these ghettotizing stereotypes, is to lead by example for our youth and be like, no, this is us as a people. Mm-hmm. We give back. We love our people. We share. We are a community, and embrace the community. Have them embrace the community. Be a part of your community so they know how important it is. And then they'll see people for people, looking at people for people. So when they hear a policy that affects their people, they know what's up. Mm-hmm. They ain't gotta question it.
Yeah, it's also being being proud of things. I know it came up as there was a little bit of a debate on social media about this that I had seen, but the brand Ghetto Gastro.
Oh yeah.
The idea of them taking the word ghetto and turning it into something to be proud of is important, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's the brand themselves, the way that they had transformed the word ghetto, and connecting it with food, and then food that's good for you, that's healthy for you, the cookbook in itself, and I think the products that they pull out are vegan. Are they gluten free? They may or may not be gluten free.
This is not a free plug, but shout out them.
Yeah. But all of those things, right, and truly transforming something that you can be proud of. They can be proud of, and we can do, be proud of the word ghetto because of what they turned it into.
To rebrand it.
Yeah, right.
There's other things that we've rebranded before. Many words that we've rebranded before.
Yeah.
And now we sit here and we embrace that. I mean, some people don't, which I respect.
I mean, we rebranded so plenty of things. We rebranded, dare I say, we rebranded Christianity.
Yeah, like what James Baldwin said.
We turned it into something that, right, it was used to oppress us, to enslave us, and we gave it life for us to use as a tool to save us, to liberate us. I should say save, liberate us, to give us community. And I know that might be a conversation or debate now, as the church is a very heated debate, but at one point in time, that's what it was. And we take things that were our food, for example, right? A lot of our food came from scraps that we turn into some of the great dishes that I've ever tasted before.
Sure, right. Yeah. I mean, I'm chilling on the chitlins, but
that one, yeah, you can't. I'm not.
Y'all got that. Y'all got that one.
But oxtails.
Right, oxtails. Every time, man. Can't wait.
All different kinds of things like that. Those I get down with.
Not gonna lie, as soon as you said oxtail, I thought of Carrie Fest. Carrie Fest, man. Shout out Twin Cities Cary Fest, the Caribbean Cultural Center in Minneapolis. Every summer they have a great festival. You can get all the Caribbean food you like, all the great live music, and yeah, man, the mocktails there.
Slap. I mean,
Ain't no joke.
I have to get some every single time.
Every single time.
Every single time.
For real. And that's the beauty of it, man. And man. All right, so I think it's time to move on to our next question. Here, I'm just gonna pull this my way. How does systematic racism and internalized racism interact with each other to create dueling consciousness? Is there a point where we can blame ourselves for our shortcomings as Black Indigenous people of color? Damn.
I feel like when I came up with this question, like as I was reading it, do I think that we could blame ourselves? No. I think that there is a place where like there is a self-fulfilling prophecy that we do, right? We're being told all these things, so then some of us then tend to believe it and then fall into that category. But like I almost think of it as like a chicken and the egg situation also in a way.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Like and more so like right, it's just a cycle. It's a cycle that keeps happening. As like I'm reading about his interpretation on dueling consciousness, and it just feels like a constant like circle that is not being broken. And I just thought like it was a question. You know, some people might think that we are part to blame for certain downfalls. I don't think that's necessarily the case, because I think when you have as many systems as we do that have truly been built brick by brick, okay, to be altered every time we've made, you know, instances of push like resistance and moving forward have been altered to then right do something else, right? I don't think that you can necessarily say that, and it feels like a circle that we keep just going around and round and round and round and round it. Like there's almost like no starting point and no ending point.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that we are to blame, because at the end of the day, there is a system that is at work against us, and the only thing that we can do is control ourselves to an extent. And that's the sad reality, is that I can't even fully say is that we have full control over our bodies. Because sadly, as people of color, that's just not the reality. But I do think that, I don't think it's our fault, but we do add on to certain things due to the system doing it what it's supposed to, by people of color pushing and believing in racist policy. I mean, just an example, the fact that a person of color right now could even consider standing on the side of ICE. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? But also, I can't blame you, because that's what the system really wanted you to believe. They wanted you to believe that immigrants are the criminals, when in fact, it is the forefounders that are the criminals. It's the people that created this giant, that made the system, you know? And majority of the times we're pointing fingers at each other and not pointing fingers up at the powers that be.
Yeah.
So I think that even though this, like, I'm not saying it's our fault for that, but we do get caught up in that shit.
Right. I think that's that circle. I says page 31. This dueling consciousness nourished Black pride by insisting that there was nothing wrong with Black people, but it also cultivated shame with its implications that there was something behaviorally wrong with black people. Well, at least those other black people. If the problem was in our own behavior, then Reagan revolutionaries were not keeping black people down. We were keeping ourselves down.
Truly.
And so, like, I think that there's that space, but that's also like that circle thing, right? Like these systems that are perpetuating these racist ideas then kind of transform this space where then we may start to keep ourselves down because we're perpetuating those same things on each other, even if it's not ourselves per se.
Whenever you hear like somebody sit here and throw an adjective behind like a person of color, like a thug, calling somebody a thug, just putting a word behind some type of people, that should be like red flag number one. When you don't internalize that and be like, okay, that's a bad thing. When you don't, you're internalizing racism, and you're accepting that. And when we begin to do that and do those like little, it's not little, those are big moves. But once you start readjusting and reteaching yourself those things that like, okay, when I hear this, that's a red flag. I'm not listening to whatever this motherfucker got to say.
Right.
And now, but if you sit there and you do give them the time of day and you do sit there and you think that that what they're saying is right, you're just playing into that system. It's internalized racism. Yeah. Just adding it onto the system.
Right.
That's what they want you to do. That's why we got to lead by example for our students. And like something that like a dual conscious, when I used to have to deal with dual consciousness the most was when I was at the what I was explaining to you guys earlier when I was in speech. It was a very like uptight environment because bunch of students, younger students in suits, ties, giving 10-minute speeches about whatever. Some of them were more informational, some of them were more like debate style, whatever. And like, but that environment, it was more uptight. You had to fit the dress code. You had to, when you started off when you're giving your presentation, you can't do certain things because it's just unprofessional, or you can't. And when given those constrictions in that space where I was clearly, I had some type of talent, but also I had to rein myself in and make sure I didn't be too black or too this or too that. It was like I was internalizing my own racism because nobody necessarily said it, but it was enough where I could feel it.
Right.
And I let that decide that, or maybe it was just all me. Maybe it was all internally. But there's the reason why I was thinking that internally was because of the system that's at place. That makes me feel like I shouldn't be here, even though I'm proud. I was one of the more decorated people at the time. Right. Feeling like I'm out of... I don't belong here when... No, you don't belong here type shit. Not really, but right. You know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting, too, because I feel like my experience might have... It was almost like the opposite. And I know on like page 33, he talks about... it says... he's talking about... W.B. Du Bois, and he says black people have also, as Du Bois said, desired to remain Negro, discouraged by America's undeniable history of racist progress, from advancing police violence and voter suppression to winding racial inequalities in areas ranging from health to wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, this idea that, like, we still want to be black.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of black people, and, like, for me, right, that internalized space of trying to make sure that I fit in came from everywhere else except for when I was on the step team.
Mm-hmm.
Step team opened that space of being black because almost all of us were black.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it was a black thing that we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it allowed those doors to then be opened up and, like, be able to be comfortable in my blackness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once I started that, there was a more comfortability that started, like, to form. Because being around white people, you feel like you have to be in this trap box.
Right. Like, when you're being around a predominantly white people, you think that being black is this, and you don't think that it's anything else, and you don't think that there's shades to blackness.
Right.
And I don't know, when you brought up being on the step team, knowing the people on the step team, I thought of it like that. It's like literally seeing all shades of black people.
Different shades of black people in terms of personality.
Yep.
In terms of, like, literal, like, shades.
Right.
And all those things.
Yeah, and everybody kind of came from, like, a little bit of a different background.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody brought their own sauce to it, and, like, you had African Americans, you had African immigrant Americans, you had Caribbean people in there, you had all types of black people in there, and that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about, and then because that's all that really mattered,
Right.
is that we was together at that time. I didn't know one little white girl.
She was cold, though.
Yeah, she was tough. She was tough.
She was one of the
She was
best
tough.
on the team.
Yeah, she was tough.
Yeah.
Shout out to her. But yeah, it's like that importance of, like, seeing the shades and understanding that there is more to this.
Yeah.
There is nothing, and, like, there's nothing, like, technically for everybody that's the same thing for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't no such thing as, like, just a Mexican person or any Latinx person. There's not just one type of anybody part of the LGBTQ. There's not just, like, all these things. There's not just one box. So we need to start accepting that.
We're not
Opening
a monolith.
That. Right. Nothing's black and white in this shit.
Yeah.
Nothing's black and white. We shouldn't want it to be black and white.
Right.
I like colors.
Colors are beautiful.
Yeah. So how we end it off?
Yeah, I think that, we ended off with, he says, page 334, to be an anti-racist is to emancipate oneself from the dueling consciousness. To be anti-racist is to conquer the assimilationist consciousness and the segregationist consciousness. And I think that bringing it back to the reason why this book was chose first in the first place, right? To be able to have a basis of what it means to be anti-racist, to then use what we've learned from this book to apply to our lives, whether it's in our daily lives as we talk to one another face to face, on social media, which we really need to figure that one out. But and, like, all of these spaces in between, and working to, like, really come together and liberate each other. And I think that it's important to bring this up now, because right now, right, it's a scary time for a lot of people, and a lot of people are being affected that they probably wouldn't have in a lot of spaces. And I think right now, specifically in Minnesota, with the things that have transpired, the murder of Renee Good, the shooting of another immigrant man, and all of the other killings that have happened throughout the U.S. Beyond what's just happening in Minnesota, because it is very important to talk about those as well. Well, I don't have names off the top of my head. We'll be sure to put them somewhere to bring awareness. This is not okay. And we need to be able to come together as a community. We need to be able to help out our communities, no matter the instances and the circumstances. I know there's a lot of conversation. There's been a lot of conversations going around with the presidential election that had just taken place, and there being people who didn't vote at all or voted for Trump. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't help people that don't look like us, who are currently being attacked right now. Not to mention, right, the fact that we are being attacked of people who look like us. Right? It's not just the Hispanic community that's being attacked right now in Minneapolis. It's the Somalian community. It's the Asian community. Right? They've detained Black Americans. They've detained Native Americans, which still can't wrap my head around that, but I digress.
People of color.
Right?
Detaining people of color. Just people of color. Shoot. White people with that spray tan, y'all better watch out. You never know. It might be y'all next.
I mean, they're stopping and pulling people over that are white and asking for the identification. Right? Like, everybody is being affected by this, and it's really important that we do something, whether it is getting out there and doing protests, whether it's joining the organized marches or protesting outside the detention centers, the Whipple building, standing on street corners and blocks with a whistle out, right, allowing people to know when ICE is nearby, providing resources for community members to get proper help, bringing awareness to things that are going on, videotaping, things like that, right, whatnot, so to be able to provide documentation, right, donating, whatever it is, right, whatever that you feel like you have the capacity to do is important to do it.
100%.
And that can look like anything, because it's hard out here for everybody.
Truly.
Right, giving safe spaces. If you work with students, giving safe spaces to students to feel like they can come and ask for help when they're being attacked as well, right? Being that safe space, right? All of these things are important regardless of what happened, because nobody should want this to happen to anybody. We shouldn't sit and just watch.
You can't just sit and watch. And if you could just sit and watch, you need to reevaluate things. I mean, there's no words for what is going on right now. I mean, America has been known to do these things, but now it's our turn. It's our turn to do something. We can't wait. History has repeated itself enough. And that's why we're doing the learning that we're doing. And so we don't repeat those mistakes. That we don't continue to repeat these things that keep us in these endless cycles. And if we can learn how to be an anti-racist, we can prevent things from this from happening in the future. And it starts by deconstructing your mind. It starts with you. And then once you get yourself together, then you go find somebody else to help out. Because the power is within the people. And we got to spread it. Knowledge is power. And if we continue to spread the power to our people, we'll be all right. There's nothing that a system can do if we continue to do that. But we got to do that. That's the work. Carry these things that we learn with us moving forward and put in the work.
Right. Part of this podcast is to help figure out what we can do to mobilize in our communities. And so we're trying to help build a basis for what that looks like. We're still learning with you guys as all of this is happening, and we're reading books, and there'll be a lot of books that me personally have read before, and there's going to be tons of books that I've never read day in my life, right, that I'll be able to learn from and be able to make new connections. And right, it's important that like our space is important, like for us to like truly be able to use what we've learned in our community to liberate everybody. Liberation is for everybody. Nobody's free
Until we all free. Truly. So we here at the Off the Shelf Book Club say, abolish ICE, abolish the whole damn system, police, prisons, you too, because if they could do this now, they could do it again, like they've been doing it to us. And so it's important for everybody to link arms right now. All we got is us. Power to the people. And we hope y'all stay safe. We wish y'all well-being. And Ashe. Hold up. We almost forgot. We got some questions for you in our new section for episode 2. We will be reading chapters 3 through 6. And question 1 will be, how did racial puberty show for you? How did it feel?
How can we name future generations or change names that honor our ancestry and not our oppressors?
Is it possible for those who benefit from racist power and policies to be able to give up their self-interest for other people, and can you expect others to do that?
How does the beliefs of Carl Linnaeus on page 41 reflect on the history of racist policies? How do we combat these beliefs and policies today?
How do microaggressions show up beyond the usual examples we see?
How do we identify and use new words without erasing the history of other words?
Is there a way, and if so, can we transform religion in churches to do the work to help people like it's done in the past with AME churches during slavery and churches who helped during the civil rights movement?
Why is there so much animosity between Africans and African Americans? How can we repair this?
How does our government and media portray black violence? How does this affect society?
How does fear of the black body affect us?
All right, thank you for joining again, and we wish you well, and we look forward to seeing you episode 2, and look forward to all of your comments from episode 1. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe.
Ashe.
Ashe.
People, baby.
To truly choose to love is heroic.
Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people.